We interrupt this program for a special news bulletin. 3 young singers who soared to the heights of show business on the current rock and roll craze were killed today in the crash of a light plane in an Iowa snow flurry. The singers were identified as Ritchie Valens, 17, Buddy Holly, 22, and J.P. Richardson, known professionally as the Big Bopper. The aircraft, chartered from the Dwyer Flying Service, crashed near Mason City, ironically the setting for the prominent musical The Music Man. The pilot, Roger Peterson of Clear Lake, Iowa, was also killed. The 3 singers had appeared at the Surf Ballroom in Clear Lake, Iowa last night and were on their way to Fargo, North Dakota. Their small chartered plane crashed in a lonely farmyard about 15 miles northwest of Mason City. Cause of the crash was due to inclement weather conditions. Details upcoming from Action Central News.
This is the Voice of Freedom. You're listening to the Worldwide Freedom Radio Network. Hello, everybody. You're listening to the Hour of the Time. I'm William Cooper. Today is a famous day in history, depending on who you are, of course. Some people would not regard it as such. So I'm going to take exactly 3 calls to see if someone else besides us knows exactly what happened on this day that is important to a lot of people, including me, and whoever, if one of our 3 callers can guess what today is famous for, they will win a free book of my choosing. Okay, it's my choice. You don't get to pick, but you will get a free book, and what you'll need to do is, if you're the winner, we'll get your name, and then all you have to do is send us a postcard with your address on it, because I don't want to give your address on the air. We will send you a book. You'll be happy with it, I guarantee it. So the number is 520-333-4578. And we're going to start the 3 calls right now. We're only going to take 3 calls. If you know what today is famous for, and there are a couple of people whom we've talked to today who know the answer to this. If you're one of those couple of people, don't bother calling, because as soon as I recognize your voice, we're going to hang up on you. This is for people whom we have not discussed anything with today about this broadcast. This broadcast is also going to go over time. If you're an affiliate station, or if you're listening on satellite, this broadcast will not end at the normal time. It will go overtime until it is finished. And that may mean preempting some later programming, which will, of course, be made up for at some other time. So, the number is 520-333-4578. If you have the answer, if you know what happened on this day in history, then give me a call right now. We're not going to wait around for you to make up your mind or look in the World Almanac. We're gonna start the clock ticking right now, and we're going to wait exactly 5 minutes to take these 3 calls. And after that time, we're going to go on with the broadcast and tell you what happened on this day, and you won't win a book. So if you'd like to take a chance, excuse me, folks, got a little frog in my throat. If you'd like to take a chance on winning a free book, give me a call. Good evening. You're on the air.
Hi, Bill.
Hello.
I'm Sharon. I live in Ohio.
Hi, Sharon. What's this day famous for?
Supposedly, the income tax law was ratified, but it was not.
Sorry, Sharon, you missed.
Wilson died today.
Nope, that's not it either.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry, nice try, and thanks for calling. 520-333-4578. That's one call. We're only going to take 2 more, so if you want to get your call in, you better do it right now before somebody beats you out. Good evening, you're on the air.
Good evening.
Hello. Turn off your radio.
Ohio?
Turn off your radio.
Okay, trying to turn it off. Yeah, it's off.
Okay, what's this day famous for?
I believe it's the Federal Reserve Act.
Nope. You want to try one more guess?
I thought it was either Federal Reserve or income tax.
Well, it may be, but that's not what this broadcast is about today.
Okay, sir. Well, I admire your efforts there, and thank you.
Thank you for calling. And thank you for trying. 520-333-4578. You're all going to kick yourself when you hear, and it's going to be a good broadcast. For those of you who want to listen to it in its entirety, we're going to go beyond our normal time. That means for you listeners on shortwave, you're going to miss a good portion of the later part of this broadcast. Good evening. You're on the air.
Hi, Bill. What happened to deal with the Templars?
Nope.
Rats. Oh, well.
You're caller number 3. Want to try one more time?
No, I'd have no other idea.
No idea whatsoever?
No, not right. I'm sure when you mention it, I'll kick myself.
Okay. Well, maybe this will jog your memory.
Hello, baby. Yeah, this is the Big Bopper speaking. Oh, sweet thing. Do I want? Will I want? Oh, baby, you know what I like. Chantilly lace and a pretty face and a ponytail hanging down, wiggling the walk and a wiggling the talk. Make the world go round. There ain't nothing in the world like a big-eyed girl to make me act so funny, make me spend my money, make me feel real loose like a long-necked goose, like a girl. Oh, baby, that's the one I like. What's that, baby? But, oh, honey. But, oh, baby, you know what I like. Chantilly lace had a pretty face, had a ponytail hanging down, a wiggle in the walk and a wiggle in the soft law. Make the world go round, round, round. There ain't nothing in the world like a big-eyed girl to make me act so funny, make me spend my money, make me feel real loose like a long-necked goose, like a girl. Oh, baby, that's the one I like. What's that, honey? Take you up at 8, and don't be late. But baby, I ain't got no money, honey. Oh, all right, honey, you know what I like. Chantilly lace had a pretty face, ponytail hanging down, a wiggle in the walk and a wiggle in the song. Lord, made the world go round. ain't nothing in the world like a big-eyed girl that make me act so funny. Spend my money, feel real loose like a long-legged goose, like a girl. Oh, baby, that's what I like!
And that was the Big Bopper with Chantilly Lace. And this might also jog your memory. How many of you listening fell in love listening to that last musical selection? I'm going to let Wolfman Jack introduce you to the last subject and the main subject of today's broadcast.
Who's this on the Wolfman Cannonball?
This is Joe in Little Rock, way down the valley.
You call from Little Rock, California?
Yeah, long distance.
My. Listen, man, what kind of entertainment you got in that town?
All we got is you.
That'll be the day. The late, great Buddy Holly on the Wolfman Jack Show.
Money too well, you know you love me, baby. You tell me maybe that someday we'll all be through. Well, that'll be the day when you say goodbye. That'll be the day when you make me cry. You say you're gonna leave. You know it's a lie, 'cause that'll be the day when I die. So it was ever part when I leave you. You say that hold me, hang me, tell me boldly that someday I'll be through. Well, that'll be the day when you say goodbye. Yeah, that'll be the day when you make me cry. You say you don't leave, you know it's a lie, 'cause that'll be the day when I die. Well, that'll be the day. So that'll be the day. So that'll be the day.
On February the 3rd, 1959, ladies and gentlemen, a small plane piloted by Roger Peterson and carrying as passengers J.P. Richardson, also known as the Big Bopper, Ritchie Valens, and Charles Buddy Holly, took off from Clear Lake, Iowa, and shortly after crashed, killing all aboard. I'm going to read you an article from the Clear Lake, Iowa Mirror Reporter, published on February the 5th, 1959. It's volume 90, issue number 2. The headline is Death of Singers Here Shocks Nation. Rock and Rollers Pilot Die in Tragic Plane Crash. There was no fearful omen of tragedy Monday night when 1,100 teenagers and their parents packed the Surf Ballroom in Clear Lake for a gala rock and roll dance. Featured were 4 nationally known entertainers: Buddy Holly and the Crickets, the Big Bopper, Ritchie Valens, and Dion and the Belmonts. The entertainers were full of pep, reacting joyously to the big crowd of young people. The Big Bopper, J.P. Richardson, who wrote the hit song Chantilly Lace, and Ritchie Valens, author of several top hits, playfully Indian wrestled backstage between acts. 2 hours after the dance, 3 of the 4 singers were dead, along with the pilot who was flying them to Fargo, North Dakota, for another appearance. Their broken bodies were found in and around the wreckage of the light plane they had charted after the dance Monday night. Dead were the pilot, Roger Peterson, 21, of Clear Lake, Charles Buddy Holly, 22, of Lubbock, Texas, Ritchie Valens, real name Richard Valenzuela, 17, of Los Angeles, California, J.P., the Big Bopper Richardson, 28, of Beaumont, Texas. Word of their death when the plane was found Tuesday morning in a snow-covered field 6 miles north of the airport focused nationwide attention on Clear Lake. The 3 singers are considered among the top rock and roll artists in the United States, and their recordings are currently on the best-selling list, some over the million mark. The fatal crash occurred on the Albert Jewell Farm in a pasture about a half-mile west of the farmhouse. The plane, a Beechcraft Bonanza, chartered from the Dwyer Flying Service, took off about 1 a.m. from the airport with the 3 men after they were taken to the airport by Carol Anderson, surf manager, his wife and son, Tommy. It is believed to have crashed shortly thereafter into the field on the Jewell Farm. Wreckage of the plane was discovered by Jerry Dwyer about 9:30 a.m. Tuesday. He had received no reports from the plane since it departed, and he began the search in another plane Tuesday morning. The craft first scraped the ground at a spot in the middle of the field, breaking off one wing and other parts of the plane. It then bounced and skidded about 200 yards further to the northwest, scattering wreckage and debris along the way until it piled into a wire fence along the north end of the pasture. The plane was completely demolished in the crash, but did not burn. The bodies of the 3 entertainers were thrown from the plane, 2 of them lying a short distance to the south of the plane, and the 3rd was thrown over the fence about 20 feet into the next field. The body of the pilot was entangled amid the wreckage of the main part of the plane. Ambulances took the victims to the Ward and Wilcox funeral homes in Clear Lake. An investigation was launched by the Civil Aeronautics Administration after the crash to determine its cause. Jerry Dwyer, operator of the flying service, could give no reason, stating that the plane was in good condition and that Mr. Peterson was a competent pilot. Indications pointed to the fact that the plane touched the ground at a low angle, skidding along the field instead of plunging steeply into the ground. The only mark at the place where it first hit was a furrow scraped out by a wingtip. Civil Aeronautics Administration investigators arrived in Clear Lake later Tuesday and remained overnight. Guards were posted at the scene throughout the day and through Wednesday night to keep the wreckage intact for the investigation. The major significance of loss of the 3 artists to the music world was indicated by the immediate requests of national press associations for full coverage. Requests also have been received from Life magazine for pictures. Other members of the troupe who appeared at the Surf Monday night were traveling to Fargo by chartered bus. Ironically, Buddy Holly had told KRIB disc jockey Bob Hale at the Surf that he didn't want to take a chance in the bus since it had broken down while traveling from Green Bay, Wisconsin to Clear Lake the day before. The three, therefore, decided to charter the plane and take care of advance arrangements in Fargo Tuesday. Valens, who only last year was a high school student at San Fernando, California, had just finished his first movie, and his song Donna sold more than 1 million records. Richardson, known as the Big Bopper, won nationwide fame for the song Chantilly Lace, which he wrote some months ago. Buddy Holly, singing star of the Crickets, has made 8 records, 2 of which, Peggy Sue and That'll Be the Day, sold over 1.5 million copies. His newest record just released is It Doesn't Matter Anymore. Roger Peterson, the pilot, was born May 24, 1931 at, looks like Alta, the son of Arthur and Pearl Kramer Peterson. He graduated from Fairview Consolidated School in 1954, attending Ross Aviation School at Tulsa, Oklahoma, and was employed by the Graham Flying Service at Sioux City before coming to Clear Lake about a year ago. He was a member of the Redeemer Lutheran Church at Ventura and of the Clear Lake Junior Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Peterson and D.Ann Lentz were married September 14, 1958 in Alta and had resided in Clear Lake since their marriage in one of the Armsbury cottages on North Shore Drive. Besides his wife, he is survived by his parents, 2 brothers, Ronald and Robert, 1 sister, Janet, his grandmother, Mrs. Elmer A. Peterson of Sioux Rapids. Funeral services were held at 2 p.m. Thursday, today, at the Redeemer Lutheran Church, with the Reverend E.H. Widman officiating. Services also will be held at 2 p.m. Friday at St. Paul's Lutheran Church at Alta, with burial to be in the Storm Lake Memorial Cemetery. Arrangements in Clear Lake were through the Wilcox Funeral Home. The body of J.P. Richardson was taken by air Wednesday to Beaumont, Texas for funeral service. He was born October 24, 1930, and is survived by his wife, Adrian, and a daughter, Deborah, who are in New Orleans. Mrs. Richardson also is expecting another child. Arrangements here were through the Ward Funeral Home. The body of Ritchie Valens was scheduled to be taken by rail Wednesday to San Fernando, California for funeral services. Richard Valenzuela was born May 13, 1941, to Mr. and Mrs. Joseph Valenzuela. He is survived by his mother, Concepcion Reyes of Pacoima, California. Arrangements for Mr. Valens were completed through the Ward Funeral Home. The body of Charles Buddy Holly, who was born September 7, 1936, was taken by plane Wednesday afternoon to Lubbock, Texas for funeral services. Arrangements here also were completed through the Wilcox Funeral Home. Ladies and gentlemen, the world lost 3 very good entertainers. Buddy Holly has reached the status of cult hero. And believe me, there is no better term for that. We have here in this studio every recording that Buddy Holly ever made. And today, if the creek don't rise, we're going to play every single one of them. We may take a break at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time in order to allow the Jackie Petru broadcast to go on the air. Normally, we would preempt her broadcast for this special network presentation. However, tonight she is going to be picked up by a couple of new affiliates, and we certainly do not want her to miss out on that opportunity. So, at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, we may take a break for 1 hour and come back and pick up where we left off and complete this special tribute to Ritchie Valens, J.P. Richardson, also known as the Big Bopper, and of course, Charles Buddy Holly. Since we don't have a tremendous collection of Ritchie Valens and J.P. Richardson, we will concentrate and honor them all by playing every single recording that Buddy Holly ever made in his entire career. And all of you who think that you heard all of the records that Buddy Holly made, you're in for a big surprise, because this young man was prolific. He was prolific, ladies and gentlemen. He started off playing country and western. His first recordings were country and western. He then moved on to what then was known as the bop, and then finally to rock and roll. He was truly an individual. He did not take advice well. He knew how he was supposed to sound, and by golly, he made sure that that's exactly the way that he did sound. We hope that you all enjoy this special presentation, and we hope that you will not forget Ritchie Valens, J.P., the Big Bopper, Richardson, or Buddy Holly, for they have truly lent to all of us a lot of joy, an awful lot of some of the most wonderful music that has ever been written, produced, and recorded in the United States of America. This is the first record that Buddy Holly ever recorded in his life. It's called, ladies and gentlemen, I Gotta Get You Near Me Blues. And I think you're going to find out that your conception of who Buddy Holly was is going to change this evening. We'll be interrupting with comment and an awful lot about the life and times of Buddy Holly.
I got to stop getting married. I got to stop getting married. Have you ever had a feeling that I was young? When people go away from the one that you love, I got to stop getting married.
And that was followed by Soft Place in My Heart. Not only, ladies and gentlemen, will you get to know Buddy Holly better this afternoon, you're going to get to know Bill Cooper a lot better than you ever thought that you did. Well, you never would have dreamed I'd do something like this. But then you don't know that I was a disc jockey at the age of 16 for the Armed Forces Radio Network in Tokyo, Japan.
longer be so blue. I've got a soft place in my heart, my darling, for you.
On the band, or I should say in the band, that you're listening to, ladies and gentlemen, at this time, was Buddy Holly, who did all of the vocals, lead guitar, and Bob Montgomery did some of the vocals, played the guitar, Sonny Curtis on the fiddle, probably Don Guess on the bass. The exact person is unknown, but Don Guess played an awful lot with Buddy Holly when he was on his home turf. There's an unknown steel guitar player. Nobody's ever been able to find out who exactly that was on Soft Place in My Heart, Door to My Heart, and Flower of My Heart. And these were mostly recorded in Newman Recording Studios in Wichita Falls, Texas, from 1954 through 1955. Additional accompaniment was by the Fireballs, added by Norman Petty, Clovis, New Mexico in 1964. Some of these that you're going to hear initially in this broadcast were recorded at KDAV in Lubbock, Texas in 1954 or sometime in 1955. The exact dates are not really known. Come on, buddy. Open up the door to my heart.
I'll open the door and let it enter. The door to my heart. Your loving hand. But you were not really. You just stepped inside. Now the door to my heart is still open wide.
much is next.
Wouldn't you know that if you opened the door to your heart, you'd find the flower? Well, found the flower, opened the door. What do you call that? Baby, it's love.
One minute I'll just a kiss. In my heart was all miss. It's love, baby, it's love. Sitting there stuck in my arms, going out to learn all it's done. In my heart like fire on this love, baby, it's love. 12 hours you can't last one day for me to realize. My heart's faster, faster, faster. 7 days away to plan. 1 week, minute out of 10. My life I've had the matters, man, it's love, baby, it's love.
Buddy Holly was often criticized, ladies and gentlemen, for having a beat problem. Now, he didn't see it that way, but this is one example where you can see the tempo speed up and slow down. Times it seems to get ahead of the vocalist.
Your back off every bit. 1 minute of your big kiss. In my heart was all miss. It's love, baby, it's love. 15 minutes of you in my heart. Going out to learn all you've done. In my heart like fire one. It's love, baby, it's love. Feel about you who can't lie. One day for you to realize. My heart flutters like butterflies. It's love, baby, it's love. 4 weeks of walking kisses. 1 month of fighting misses. Wonder now what the heck was this? It's love.
And, you know, any love affair always brings with it a batch of memories.
You've left me alone with memories. I tried to amuse you. I love you with my heart every beat. Now my hopes are gone like wind. through the street. Cause you've left me alone with memories. I know that it may seem to you that I don't really care, but someday when you're all alone and memories are there, you know you've left me alone with memories. Forgetting what you meant to me. For now I realize that I'm alone. In my mind I really know that you are gone, but my foolish heart refuses to see why you left me alone with memories. That it may seem to you that I don't really care, but someday when you're all alone and memories are there, you'll know you've left me alone with memories.
And those memories are going to send them downtown to the Queen of the Ballroom.
Oh, I remember the Queen of the Ballroom. I think every man when he's young remembers the Queen of the Ballroom.
You're the Queen of the Ballroom. You're in every man's song. When I look upon you, I fill me with your charm. You have all men at your feet with your lovely ways, and I will love you forever and always. May I have this dance now? I know you're looking for fun, not romance. You're the Queen of the Ballroom, and I love you more and more. Queen of the Ballroom, Queen of the Ballroom, go.
And wouldn't you know, as soon as he met the Queen of the Ballroom, he had to gamble his heart. Now ain't the way it always goes. Every mother knows.
Why so
And of course, once you've gambled your heart, now you and I are through.
But, Connie, we just started.
We're through.
Oh, no. I'm going to go find Peggy Sue.
You said you were leaving me, you were gonna let me, but now I find you. I love you for just you, but then I never do. Now you and I love you in my darling, love you every day. Trust me, my darling, love you sweet. You love me, but I just don't care about you. Love that I'll get in you and I. But said I never do. Now you and I love you in my darling, love you every day. Trust me, my darling, love you sweet, sweet. You love me, but I just don't care about you. Love out there and you and I. Love you in my darling, love you every day. Trust me, my darling, love you sweet, sweet. You love me, but I just don't care about you. Love out there and you and I.
Okay, I can take a hint. I'm gone.
Now you're gone. The sun, the moon, the stars, knowing why I cry. I'm all alone. I know. Now you're gone. Oh, what I give for the life I wanted, the love that I tasted. I know I'm wrong. I'm all alone. Now you're gone.
Well, singing like that. Have you ever been lonely?
Have you ever been lonely? Have you ever been Have you ever loved someone just as I love you? I'm sorry for the things I did. I
Mother? Mother? Mother, I'm moving on down the line, Mom. Won't be home for a long, long time. When Buddy Holly and Bob Montgomery began recording demos in 1954, the thought that their efforts might end up on a commercial record probably never even entered their heads. They were, after all, only intending to send tapes and acetate dubs to record companies and agents who might, if they were lucky, invite them to record professionally. All the recordings that you're listening to right now were made as demonstration tapes and would no doubt most probably have remained unheard by other than a few people had it not been for the demand for previously unreleased recordings in the years following Buddy Holly's death. In many cases, the recordings were made on domestic equipment, and those that were made in professional studios often only survived as dubs, which after many playings began to show signs of wear. In 1961, Holly's manager, Norman Petty, began collecting these tapes and dubs from various sources, including Buddy Holly's family, friends, and business associates. Bob Montgomery had kept copies of the demos he had made with Buddy, and further tapes came from High Pockets Duncan, a Lubbock disc jockey who played a considerable part in getting Buddy and Bob started professionally. Most of these tapes were then overdubbed by musicians under Norman Petty's direction in an attempt to make them more acceptable for the commercial market. Unfortunately, no one thought to use the musicians who had accompanied Buddy during his career, and the results were varied in their degree of success. The recordings on this broadcast were overdubbed at various times between 1962 and 1968, the musicians being members of the Fireballs, a group who achieved some considerable success on their own account throughout the 1960s. You just heard Buddy and Bob's attempts to come to terms with the country and western market in the early 50s. Most of the tracks were recorded in their hometown of Lubbock and at Nessman Recording Studios in Wichita Falls, Texas. The Lubbock demos were made at KDAV, a radio station which offered local musicians a chance to perform live on the Sunday Party, an afternoon program hosted by, yep, you guessed it, High Pockets Duncan. He said, quote, "Those boys were pretty enthusiastic about playing to an audience," and he remembers, "and I could see they had something. Now a lot of the kids that came down to the station had talent, but the big thing about Buddy and Bob, and Buddy in particular, was their determination to get out and get going," end quote. Apart from being a DJ, High Pockets took care of booking better-known artists into local venues like the Cotton Club, at the time Lubbock's most successful country dance hall. Artists like Marty Robbins, Ferlin Husky, and Porter Wagoner all played the Cotton Club, and Buddy and Bob tried their hardest each time to convince High Pockets that he should have them on the show as a supporting act. In many cases, he was able to favor them. They didn't earn much money, but the boys were happy to be on the same stage as the artists they idolized. Later, KDAV and High Pockets booked Elvis Presley, at the time just getting started on Sun Records, into the club, and Buddy and Bob went along. Buddy talked to Elvis and later reported to Duncan that he was, quote, a real nice, friendly fellow, end quote. The next day, Buddy and Bob appeared with Elvis in a show to mark the opening of the local Pontiac dealer's showroom. And it wasn't long before Presley began to have a definite influence on Holly's singing, to the extent that his performance on the next Sunday party show included several of Presley's songs. Drummer Jerry Allison had become friendly with Buddy Holly during 1955, but at the time had few opportunities to play in the band that by now included Larry Wellborn on bass. Jerry explained, when I started out with them, they had a group that was really just a duo in junior high school. That was the first time I saw them play, and they were strictly country music then. Then the band got bigger. I joined, and they got a steel guitar player. Then Sonny Curtis began playing fiddle with them. We started putting in a few rock and roll songs, but still playing mostly country. Then later, it became all rock and roll, or bop, as we called it, with a little country flavor. And folks, when I first went to junior high school, the bop was the big thing. Most of you listening don't even know what I'm talking about, but you're going to hear some bop in just a few moments. Jerry goes on to say, then Elvis came along, and we did every record he had out. Then when he came to Lubbock, he didn't have a drummer. So the group went back to being just Buddy and Bob with Larry playing bass. Buddy didn't want drums, because Elvis didn't have drums. So I just hung out and didn't play. Then one day Elvis came through again, and he had drums, so we started having drums again. Folks, by the time Buddy and Bob had left high school, they had seriously begun to consider the chances of getting on a record label. With this in mind, they made several demo recordings, which came close in style to Elvis's Sun recordings. Sid King, at that time a popular rockabilly singer from Dallas, Texas, had met Holly a couple of times and remembers hearing the demos he had made in Dallas, among them Baby Let's Play House, titled I Wanna Play House in error on previous releases, and Down the Line. We were recording then for Columbia, and Buddy thought we were a big deal. Like when we went to Lubbock, he'd come up to the bandstand at the Cotton Club, and he'd want to sit in with us. So we let him. But at that time, he was on an Elvis Presley kick. Everything he did was Elvis. He'd sound exactly like him, even on the dubs he made. Sid also remembers Buddy's enthusiasm. Like the time he suggested the group come up to Dallas, where Sid was pretty sure of getting them on the Big D Jamboree, which was the biggest country show in the area. You couldn't say something like that to Buddy, because he'd be there the next day. And that's kind of what happened. He didn't call us or anything. He just drove all the way down to Dallas on the Friday, and we were due to go on the Saturday. He didn't get paid or anything, but they let him go on, that he did real well during his Presley bit. At the time, Buddy and Bob were less concerned with making money than with getting in front of an audience. Sid was later booked to appear at a club in Wichita Falls and had mentioned the place to Buddy, not knowing that the promoter had a reputation of not paying his artists.
Couldn't make up her mind between a doctor and a lawyer man. Her mother told her daughter, go out and find yourself a brown-eyed brown-eyed handsome man. Your daddy was a brown-eyed handsome man. When the Marlowe Venus was a beautiful lad, he had the world in the palm of my hand. And always put a home in a restaurant master with a brown-eyed handsome man. Was one of them a brown-eyed handsome man.
This is my daddy's station. I'm Pooh, classic radio like you always wished it to be. 101.1 FM, Eagle.
Now you're going to hear the influence that Buddy got from one of the biggest black stars in music at that time in rock and roll, Bo Diddley.
Bo Diddley, baby, diamond ring. If that diamond ring don't shine, he's gonna take you right.
A lot of the early attempts of Buddy Holly and his protégés was imitation of bigger stars.
You better not take a ring from me. Won't you come to my house back at home? Take my baby on the way from home. Love that photo where you been. Up to your house and don't get.
This is the voice of freedom. Listening to the best radio on the worldwide Freedom Radio Network, broadcasting from studios in Eager, Arizona, on satellite GE1, transponder 7, 7.56 audio, and over 700 FM stations across the nation and around the world. The Hour of the Time is also carried on WRMI, worldwide, shortwave radio, 9955 kilohertz, Monday through Friday nights, 5 until 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
This is my daddy's station. I'm Pooh, classic radio like you always wished it could be. 101.1 FM, Eager.
We now return you to our special presentation of the Hour of the Time. Welcome back, folks, to our very special memorial broadcast of the plane crash that occurred on February the 3rd, 1959, in which not only the pilot, but Ritchie Valens, J.P. the Big Bopper Richardson, and Buddy Holly met their very early and, of course, premature death. Don't miss one single moment of tonight's broadcast. It's going to go to the wee hours. And we're going to play every single record that Buddy Holly ever cut. And we're going to be telling you everything that's known about his life. But don't forget Ritchie Valens and J.P. Richardson. The only reason we're not doing their cuts is because we don't have them.
Rock away, oh, you been
Somebody's out there asking, what's so important about this music that it has to take away from the normal purpose of the Hour of the Time? Well, folks, it's because it's American music, pure American music. It didn't come from somewhere else. It came out of the tradition of black rhythm and blues. If you're a black American and you really think for one moment that you have never contributed anything as a people to this country, you're wrong. Almost all modern American music came, ladies and gentlemen, from black music. And if you think black music is African, you're wrong. I've been to Africa, and you don't hear anything like it in Africa or anywhere else. Listen to this one now that Fats Domino later made very famous. You ought to see Connie dancing around this studio, folks. Yes, folks, what you're listening to was called the bop back then. It's not swing. And I just tried it. Although I have to do it slow, I can still do it. Honky tonk. Listen closely here, folks. You'll hear some of that tempo problem that Buddy Holly was famous for. Made other musicians angry. Some of them couldn't play with Buddy Holly because of it. I remember it also caused some toes to get stepped on the dance floor. And now, here's Elvis Holly.
It's the one for the money, two for the show, three to get
Buddy Presley. Or something like that.
Down in my face, and my name all over the place. Anything you want to do, honey, lay on my don't give for my my house, fill my car, drink my liquor, home root jar. Anything that you want to do, honey, lay over my don't get over for the money, for the show, get ready now, let's go to the show. Step on my foot, doing things all my
This next one started it all, folks, when Bill Haley and the Comets did Shake, Rattle, and Roll.
Well, get out of that chicken and rattle those pots of sand. Get out of that chicken and rattle those pots of sand. Well, the old black from the sun on the river. Well, you wear those dresses, the sun comes shining through. Yeah, you wear those dresses, the sun comes shining through. You're gonna see my eyes on and then you know. Everybody out there, shake, rattle, roll. Shake, rattle, roll. Shake, rattle, roll. Shake, rattle, roll. Well, you go to the line, baby, don't go.
Ain't got no home.
Ooh, I ain't got no home. I know where it's from. I ain't got no home.
This was made very famous later by Clarence Frogman Henry.
I got a boy and a little thing. I think it's love and I think it's soul. I'm the only boy. I ain't got home. Ooh,
Oh, got caught off guard. I was dancing with Oh, come on, baby, let's play house.
Cadillac, but don't you be nobody
Well, folks, if you just tuned in, this is a special presentation of the Worldwide Freedom Radio Network in the hour of the time. It is in memoriam of the deaths of Ritchie Valens, the Big Bopper, whose real name was J.P. Richardson, a very well-known disc jockey in the state of Texas, and, of course, Buddy Holly, whose real name was Charles. Buddy was a nickname. Both gone. And Have You Ever Been Lonely were songs Buddy recorded at home. His parents' home in Lubbock, Texas, had a room at the back of the house where he and Jerry Allison would rehearse for hours on end. Mrs. Holly remembers. Boy, does Mrs. Holly remember. And you'd remember, too, if you had a bunch of teenagers in some room in your house banging on drums and singing and twanging on guitars day after day after day. She said Jerry's drums sat in our living room for the longest time. They were almost part of the furniture, but we never minded Buddy practicing at our house with his friends. He was trying to be a success, so of course we were all for him. I remember him recording, "Have You Ever Been Lonely?" At the end of the song, you can hear him call me to come into the room and listen. Or maybe he was calling for a glass of water. You remember, folks, you just heard it just a little while ago. And I echoed his call. Mom! And, you don't get that kind of stuff from real studio recordings. Nicky Sullivan, who also joined Buddy's group later in 1956, remembers sitting in on such a session on a winter evening that year. He said, Buddy was having one of those jam sessions, and I was invited through a friend who had a wire recorder, the forerunner of the tape recorder. He was going over to make a wire recording of Buddy and Jerry and asked if I wanted to go along. And he said, bring your guitar, because Buddy may let you play. So we got over there and just kicked a few songs around, and that really was the beginning of the Crickets as we became later. Connie, don't juggle those records. You ever see somebody juggle long playing 33 1/3 RPM records? Well, I just did, and it almost gave me a heart attack because these are irreplaceable, ladies and gentlemen, and I mean irreplaceable. Can't find them anymore. If you can, I'll tell you what, if you can, you better grab them, because not only are they rare, but they're valuable, and they're a valuable part of American musical history. Some of the rehearsals were put on tape. For example, tracks 3 and 10 that you just heard during this last session here were probably recorded in one session either at the Hollies' home or Buddy's brother Larry's garage. It seems likely that Buddy and Jerry prepared the tape in order to demonstrate to booking agents what they could do, since none of the songs apart from Holly's Hop is original, the tape being a cross-section of the popular songs of the day. Holly Hop is little more than a warm-up number or jam between Holly and Allison, and although the overdubbing has obscured their playing somewhat, it's a good illustration of Jerry Allison's comments on how he and Buddy began playing together. He said, Buddy's guitar playing influenced my drumming more than anything else. I haven't played with anyone. I guess he's trying to say that he hadn't played with anyone since that I could play with as well, because I learned to play drums with what Buddy played. We played together so much because we used to just sit around and rehearse for no reason, just to be playing. In many cases, the other tracks on the side of the album that you just heard, ladies and gentlemen, were obscured by attempts to make them sound like studio rather than garage tapes. But if you listen close, you can tell the difference. You see, the energy can still be heard, and it's easy to imagine Holly and Allison carrying a show on their own, as they often did in Lubbock when they lacked a bassist or a rhythm guitarist. But you see, they were playing around, and you do things different when you're playing around than you do in a studio when you're trying to make a hit record. And so, that shows, it comes out. A large part of their early repertoire came from listening to the radio, but not to Lubbock stations, as Jerry Allison explains. He said, we were into all the black music, like Clyde McFadden, the Drifters, and Ray Charles. This came about partly because a cousin of Buddy's had told me, there's really a good station from Shreveport every night at 10:30, and you should listen to that. And they were playing all that stuff. Shreveport is about 1,000 miles from Lubbock, so it was sort of hard to tune into. There was only a very small percentage of people in Lubbock who were going to any trouble like this to listen to rock and roll or rhythm and blues music. And in that day, like today, KOMA in Oklahoma City played all of the best rock and roll, which they now are known for as the Oldies station. And you can hear it for 1,000 miles in every direction on a clear, cool night. Rhythm and blues music. People were just listening to what was being played on the radio locally in Lubbock, which was pop and country. We liked all of the other stuff that you could only hear by sitting sometimes for hours at your radio and tuning in to those faraway places that none of them had ever been to. Also, folks, a lot of people didn't want to be into rhythm and blues and things like music as they called it. They looked down on that, and country music too. But I got to tell you, folks, I just got to tell you that Buddy Holly and the Crickets were really into it. If the Western and bop-style recordings Buddy Holly was making as demos in 1956 sounded odds, heard on records, they only served to illustrate how much he was misunderstood by those who were supposed to be guiding his recording career. Buddy knew what he wanted. I mean, he knew what he wanted, but he was to become increasingly aware that those who had been more successful in the recording field than he did not necessarily know or care about how to get that sound on record. Don't go away, folks, because you're going to hear every recording that Buddy Holly ever made in his entire life tonight. Right here on the Worldwide Freedom Radio Network and 101.1 FM, Eager, Arizona, and over 700 FM stations across the nation and around the world. And WRMI, Worldwide Shortwave Radio. At least for another 24 minutes on WRMI Worldwide Shortwave Radio. As Wolfman Jack would say, the late great Buddy Holly. I never did this before. Baby, Won't You Come Out Tonight was recorded in Clovis, New Mexico, sometime in 1956.
Well, baby, won't you come out tonight? Underneath the we'll have fun out on the road. Come out, my little honey bun. Well, baby, it's so bright.
Classic radio, like you always wished it could be. 101.1 Eager.
Well, baby, I love you so, and I love you and want you to know. If you come out and rock and roll, baby.
This next one is interesting because it's what we're trying to do all the time. Changing all those changes.
So now I'm changing all those changes. I'm changing all those changes that I made. I love you because I made those changes when I thought
Now, folks, if you listen carefully to this cut, you can hear the style that ultimately was to make Buddy Holly and the Crickets famous. So famous, ladies and gentlemen, that people love him to this day. I do.
And now we have Rock-a-bye Rock.
Like pulling teeth sometimes, but she's getting the hang of it, folks. And she's enjoying herself. She likes it.
Stand here, you dance out there, you powder your face and you
And it's not my fault.
Yes, it is.
He just springs it on me.
Oh, yes, it is.
It's not my fault.
I didn't do it. Buddy Holly did it.
It's not my fault if future love you can't see. I should have known I could never win your faces. I know I can't hold your heart with just a waving hand. I'm just a fool in your broken chain of hearts. Each one is falling down, and I can't hold the thought. I guess you want those songs to be free. It's not my fault if you are.
If everybody knew, ladies and gentlemen, just exactly how much fun this is, nobody would ever pay a DJ ever again in the future of the world. They'd all starve to death, but they'd have a lot of fun doing it. Just think how skinny Rush would have been. You know, he was a DJ. Now he sits on half his brain and doesn't have all the fun that he used to have. But he's got more money. And I guess because I didn't pursue that career, I was just a fool. I guess.
I could forget. Even try to tell myself we never met. Oh, you try, you can't deny the beating of your heart. Oh, you try, you can't deny a true love when it's the heart. I guess that I was just a fool. I'll go home loving you, even though I know our love will never do. Oh, you try, you can't deny the beating of your heart. Oh, you try, you can't deny the true love when it's the heart. I guess that I was just a fool.
This is my daddy's station. I'm Pooh, classic radio like you always wished it to be. 101.1 FM, Eager.
Well, love me, love me, love me. Oh, baby, love me. Well, if you love me, honey, will you let me know? If you let me, never let me go. Oh, love me, love me, love me. Well, I'm hoping you did. Oh, baby, love me, love me, love me. So you that I love you. Well, love me, never leave me, or you make me cry. If you really love me, then you'll keep my eyes dry. Love me, love me, love me. Well, I'm hoping you do. Oh, baby, love me, love me, love me. So you that I love you. All right, let's go now, let's go. love me. Love me. Oh, baby, love me. Oh, baby, love me. Baby, love me too. Well, if you love me, honey, all the night and day, then you love me, all my life I pray. Love me, well, I'm hoping you do. Oh, baby, love me, well, I love you. Well, love me, never leave me, oh, you make me cry. If you really love me, then you'll keep my eyes dry. Love me, well, I'm hoping you do. Oh, baby, love me, well, I love you. Well, love me, oh, baby, love me, oh, baby, love me too.
Hey, if you missed any portion of this broadcast, folks, don't come back knocking on my door, because I ain't not going to do it again.
Well, I found you all over and it made me blue. Like a talent scout, you want some love that's new. Don't come back knocking, and my heart closed door. I won't be home, don't call and not no more. Well, when you went away and left me all alone, while you played around, I waited at home. Don't come back knocking, and my heart closed door. Oh, I won't be home, don't call and not no more. Very own. You weren't satisfied, now I'll go home alone. Don't come back knocking, and my heart closed door. Oh, I won't be home, don't call and knock no more. Oh, let's do the knock this time, boys. Heart so empty and cold, to never know true love, but courage to hold. Don't come back knocking, and my heart closed door. Oh, I won't be home, don't call and knock no more.
I hope you're all ready, because this is a broadcast that's probably going to go into the midnight shift.
Well, if you see old Annie, better give her a lift. Well, Annie's been working on the midnight shift. If Annie her head, paint them lips up bright, bright red. Where's that dress that fits real tight? Start staying out till the middle of the night. Says to a friend, give her a lift. Well, Annie's been working on the midnight shift. If she acts a little funny, seems a little...
All this time, I never knew.
A brand new thing tells you that she wants to use the car. Never explains what she wants it for. Brother, that it ain't no if. Cause Annie's been working on the midnight shift.
Oh, no!
Connie, I thought that was your husband John working on the midnight shift.
You look at old Annie and she looks kind of rough. You tell her, honey, get out of that bed. She says, leave me alone, I'm just about dead. Brother, that it ain't no if. Well, Annie's been working on the midnight shift.
Oh, no!
If you got a good mama that's staying at home, you better enjoy it 'cause it won't last long. When you think everything's alright, you start slipping round in the middle of the night. Brother, that it ain't no if, 'cause Annie's been working on the midnight shift.
Oh, Andy, that's why I've been having those blue days and black nights.
Blue days, black nights, blue tears keep on falling for you, dear. Now you're gone. Blue days, black nights, my heart keeps on calling for you, dear, and you alone. Memories of you make me sorry. I gave you reason to doubt me, but now you're gone, and I am left here all alone with the blue memories I think of you. Black night, I didn't realize I would miss you the way I did. And now, somehow, I know I will pay for the times I have made you blue. Memories of you make me sorry. I gave you reason to doubt me, but now you're gone, and I am left here all alone with the blue memories I think of you.